Greetings and salutations. My name is Yvette Mansulich, and I'm the advisor of the Prowl at Powell Middle School. And I'd like to talk to you about how to wow your audience with specialty coverage spreads. So back in the day when I started advising in the 2000s, there was a new trend, and it was called an interrupter. And so you'd see lots of publications that would have several different gut spreads within a section, and then they would interrupt the flow of those gut spreads with what we would call an interrupter spread. What was cool about those is it would feature a particular given topic. Perhaps it was on fashion or what's trending. But what was really neat about it is that it provided visual variety in a book. It also provided the reader with alternative story forms, as opposed to traditional stories with dominant photo packages and dominant stories. Instead, you started to see these specialty spreads with infographics and cobs, and they were really visually enticing. So an interrupter spread is not going to look like your traditional dominant layout or a gut spread, a content spread. Instead, perhaps it's going to be on one particular topic. So here's an example from Corning Painting Post, and you can see this really large dominant photo, and there's only one story on the spread. And this was about the phases of the school renovation, and 84% of the entire community really was in support of the renovations that were occurring at the school. And so here you have this story, and it's considered an interrupter. So today, we've kind of evolved this concept of an interrupter into what are called the modes of coverage. What do I mean by that? Well, modes of coverage give you a variety of storytelling devices. And what's amazing about this is that it actually creates visual variety in your publication. You don't want things to be redundant. So back in the day, maybe your profiles were only in your people section. And now what I'm saying to you is that you should have profiles throughout your entire publication. There are also sorts of different modes of coverage. One is mods coverage, where literally there's just a bunch of mods on the spread, and I'm going to show you examples of that. Or perhaps you do diagram coverage. There's also photo caption coverage. Then there's type DOM, my absolute favorite, because typography as a graphic element to me is really a wow factor on a spread. Maybe you want to do lots of surveys, so you do survey coverage. Trends, of course, you find those in every single layout or of yearbooks. List coverage is really popular these days. I particularly love layered coverage because I love the design and the look of that. Editorial coverage is really going to be important this year given the election. Calendar coverage is always very important if you're doing chronological. And then, of course, timeline coverage is a really cool way to break up the flow of your gut spreads. Then there's jump coverage, where you actually have a topic that jumps from one spread to the next. And then there's magazine coverage. Maybe you want to include a magazine that's really going to help you flesh out your theme. So let's talk about profile coverage. So gone are the days where you only see profiles in your people section. Now, actually, especially given the constraints we have with COVID, I highly encourage you to include profiles throughout all the sections of your book. And using profiles as one mode of coverage is a great storytelling device. Let's look at a few examples. So here is a 2-page spread from James Enoch High School. I really love this. It's featuring two different students. One is about how her faith really impacts her life, and the other is about how being a bicultural teen and biracial teen in today's society, what that's actually like for her to experience that within her community. Here's another really cool profile. This is from McKinney High School. This profile is centered on one particular individual. And I know back in the day, you might be hesitant to do that, but I am highly encouraging you to do that. Really dig down deep, have your staff drill down, get the story of individual students. This is about a lifeguard. Here's a really cool profile that was included in Redondo Union High School. They did a phenomenal job of using the modes of coverage in their 2020 yearbook. This is about a student named Cameron, and she actually went to Hawaii, and she participated in a paddling race. So here you have, it's a summer spread, but it's a profile. Here's another profile spread. I really like this one because the majority of the page is devoted to one student's story. And he's an athlete who actually he battled a life-threatening disease, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he won. And then over on the left-hand side, you have this little mod, which are two smaller profiles that are secondary to the spread. Here's an example of a profile from West Henderson High School, and here's why I love this one. You know, we often think that we have to do traditional sports spreads, but what if you broke that up and you included profiles on athletes? And that's exactly what they did at West Henderson High School. I absolutely love this spread. Brighton High School is one of my favorite publications. This is their summer spread. And they actually did 2 profiles and then a small mod with 2 other people. So they're getting a number of different people on this spread. It's not a dominant photo package. Instead, they're little individual profiles. I love this. This one particular student, she actually went to Vietnam and she was a medical intern there. And then there's also a story about a staff member who journeyed all the way to South Africa to participate in a Global Learning Fellows program. This is a really cool profile from Highlands Park High School. What I love about this is it's talking about one student who actually was inspired by her father. And you get this amazing story of a student who is going to help her father create a prosthesis for somebody who has lost a limb. Now, sometimes academic spreads can be so boring. Just admit it. You know they are. What if you wanted to cover academics like science by doing a profile on one student and their experience with science? So here's an example of a student who actually went to the research lab at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee. So it's a profile, but it's also covering an academic topic. This is a really cool spread from Chantilly High School. What I love about it is it's featuring multiple students and their individual stories about being a musician. So let's go on to a different mode of coverage. And this is called mods coverage. And you're seeing this more and more in books, of course. This is a fantastic example of creating a spread with nothing more than quotes. I love this. It's from Legacy High School, and it's things we said or slang that was heard around the school. So you have words like woke and spill the tea. This is a great spread. Here's another example of mods coverage. Rock Canyon High School did a fantastic job of covering students' individual political opinions, whether they were Democrats, Republicans, independents. They actually showed the entire debate. Here's another example of mods coverage. This one's very different than the previous one, but it's a great illustration of how instead of having a dominant photo package, you have individual stories or individual mods. This is kind of cool because not only are they talking about students who participated in the broadcast class, but they're talking about peer tutoring and also hobbies that particular students participate in. Here's another great example from Brighton High School, and this was a really interesting spread. I love this because what they did is they told the individual stories of what students were doing during the COVID-19 outbreak. And so you had students who were at home, they were under quarantine, they were participating in arts and crafts, some were doing things outside, others were learning how to bake and grill. Other students with their families, they actually played particular board games. Some students decided to paint, the interior of their house. So what a great way to tell individual stories, but doing it in individual mods on the spread. Now, diagram coverage is another way to incorporate a modes of coverage so that you've got visual variety throughout your publication. I love Redondo Union High School's book this year, and this is a really cool spread that they did on summer vacation. And so they use this huge diagram of the United States of America, and what they do is they're telling the individual stories of students on summer break where they went to visit colleges that they might hopefully attend. Here's another really cool diagram coverage spread. What I love about this is that, as I said before, academic spreads can be so boring. But here, they actually do a diagram of biochemical cycles. And so they're actually telling the story of how students are using notes to pass classes and also to take AP exams. I love this spread. Again, what a creative way to tackle language arts. And so they're doing it with a huge diagram with all of the books that students are required to read in their language arts classes. So another mode of coverage that we're seeing in a number of publications is called photo caption. You actually don't see a dominant story. Instead, the captions tell the story. So here's a spread from Corning Painted Post. And what I love about this is you've got quotes, you have a collection of photos and captions, one headline and one subhead, but there's no traditional story on this spread. Here's another example from Westfield Middle School. I love this. They took a field trip and they actually presented it by using photos and captions instead of a traditional story. So I mentioned before that type DOM is one of my absolute favorite modes of coverage because I love typography. Anytime that you have a headline that is featuring as a graphic element, I just think it is visually dynamic. So here's an example from Redondo Union High School. Again, they did a phenomenal job organizing their books with all of these modes of coverage. And so this particular type of design was where they had a huge dominant headline. And so it says camp. Okay, camp, touch this. It's just visually appealing. It breaks up the monotony of other spreads. I love this particular mode of coverage. Here's an example from Powell Middle School, my school. And so my students did an umbrella book, and they really wanted to kind of carry the theme throughout on what we called interrupter spreads. But we did a type DOM interrupter that broke up the flow of all of our gut spreads. And so as you can see, its critter time is pretty dominant. I mean, you don't really have a huge dominant story on the spread. Instead, the typography is the dominant graphic element. Well, we all know that we conduct tons and tons of surveys in Yearbook. And so how do you actually display that particular information? Well, you can do it in fun and interesting ways. And this is an example from Corning Painted Post High School. And this is a survey, and they surveyed all sorts of students on what they did over the summer. So it's a really cool way to include infographics and statistics and quotes without a dominant photo package. Trends. I love trend spreads of course, in my publication and in others as well. And so this is a really cool layout that I found from Highland Park High School. And what I really love about this is really the photos are secondary to all of the information that is on the spread about TikTok and how the social media is really affecting students. It's a really, really cool layout. Here's another example of covering trends. And so you have this big dominant cutout of this teacher who became famous because she created a TikTok video that went viral. So, and then you've got this little list of how to make a TikTok. So you're explaining to people how to do that. It's just a really, really cool spread. Here's another example, and this is how Westfield Middle School handled TikTok. They actually included screenshots from students as they were filming their TikToks. Again, love how they're covering trends. How about lists? It's always really cool to have layouts that include lists. So let's look at a few. This is a really cool list spread from West Henderson High School. What I love about this is they're actually listing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the top fashion, food, fitness, and technology trends that are going on. Here's a specialty list spread from Corning Painted Post. Here's what I love about this. Instead of doing a traditional sports spread on swimming, they did a list spread. So they're covering swimming, but they're doing it in a unique way in terms of the design. So this is 6 things to know about girls swimming. I love this layout. This is from Highlands Park High School. And what they did is they were really clever. They actually wanted to cover all the moments from the past 10 years that define us as students and staff. And so you have individual students talking about those particular moments in the past 10 years. It's really a cool layout. This one was really clever. Have you ever thought about every single person who sits in a particular seat in a particular classroom? Well, Del Norte covered that. So it's more than just a seat, but they interviewed every single student who sits in that particular seat in that class. So during first period, second, third, fourth, fifth, really, really clever coverage. And it's presented in a really unique way. I love this spread. This is again from Del Norte High School, and it's a kind of a day in the life topical spread, but what they're doing is they're really telling the stories of students and how they're kind of, they're overbooked in terms of what they're doing. And so each person is going to tell what they do before school, during school, and after school. This is a really amazing layout from Pleasant Grove High School. And this is what students do on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then finally making it to Friday. Again, it's an interrupter spread. It is alternative coverage. It is not a dominant traditional photo package. Let's talk about layered coverage. I really like the look of layered coverage. It's where you usually have this huge dominant photo that bleeds off the spread. This one is amazing because the photo was taken from a bird's eye view. It's actually taking a picture of the orchestra as they performed a fall concert. But what's cool about it is that the staff has layered coverage on top of that dominant photo. And so not only do we see the entire orchestra, but we then see the individual musicians who are then telling their story. Editorial coverage. Well, now is the time to really cover what's happening in current events, and we have an upcoming election. What's really important is that you're telling the story from students' point of view, and so Del Norte did a really good job of interviewing students who then told about their particular political ideology and points of view. Calendar coverage. Again, a wonderful mode of coverage to give you visual diversity in your book. I really like this spread from Corning Painted Post. They did spreads on particular weeks within a month. And so this is their October 14th through the 20th spread. We've done calendar spreads as well, but sometimes we do them with an entire month. So it doesn't just have to be a week. It could be done by the month as well. Timeline coverage. Oh, my staff loves to include timelines, and where they really like to include them the most is usually with current events. So here's an example of a spread from our publication. And not only did we tell stories that were going on in the school on the timeline, but we told about local events within our own community as well as world events. Jump coverage. I highly encourage you to utilize jump coverage in your publication. I just think it's really smart. Here's a really cool spread. This is about students who are participating in a play. And so the story continues on the next spread. So you've got a topic that is jumping from one spread to the next. So here you go with the second spread that's talking about that play. I really like what James Enoch High School did. They actually included a number of jump spreads on current events. So they talk about everything from politics to climate change to science to the disasters, anything that was dominating the headlines they covered. And of course, it jumps from one spread to the next. So let's talk about what Longmont did. They actually, they had a location theme. And so they included a series of layouts about the most popular hangouts that students go to when they're not in school. I really, really love this jump coverage. It's not only is it visually dynamic, but it's a great way to tell stories. So students actually, they go to the Post, Fairgrounds, ARC. On this spread, they're also continuing to tell that story. So we're jumping from one spread to the next. I love this one. Students who participate in golf, or they actually go to the drive-in at Red Rocks. Again, more spreads. This is students who got a tattoo, or they're playing indoor soccer. Photo essays. Photo essays are making a comeback, and I absolutely love it because it's a great way to showcase really creative and artistic photos in your publication. Redondo Union High School, Boy, they did a great job of using a photo essay that also incorporates jump coverage. So they were celebrating their 100th anniversary. And so they were clever in how they decided to do this photo essay. They did 100 photos in 100 hours. Really beautiful series of spreads that not only tell the story of their community, but also showcases incredible photos. Okay, magazine coverage. Maybe you're deciding that you want to include, instead of a supplement, perhaps a little magazine, a thematic magazine. And that's exactly what Brighton High School did. I absolutely adore every yearbook that Brighton produces. And this last one was just amazing as well. And so they included a magazine in their publication that really helped evolve and carry out their theme. But it was really about what it is to be a bulldog. And so you can see on this spread here, everything from a Brighton Monopoly board to the restaurants that students go to, shops and entertainment, students going to the Rocky Mountains or South Platte River. Again, within this magazine, as it unfolds, they even incorporated things that were sports related. So you've got your girls and your boys basketball team, and they actually beat their crosstown rival, which was pretty cool because they played at the Pepsi Center. Again, another layout that is absolutely beautiful. And this really focuses on the senior boys and their bid to raise funds for the Freedom Service Dogs of America. So they actually held a pageant, a Mr. BHS pageant. So in terms of thinking about modes of coverage, you can include any kind of topic, and it's the way in which you're going to tell this story. Modes of coverage allows you to tell stories in a multitude of different ways. And that's what's really amazing about this, is that you will have not only amazing coverage, but you'll have design that is not redundant. So whether or not you're doing fashion spreads or hobby spreads, perhaps you're doing something on students' cultural heritage, pets, bucket lists, their heroes, part-time jobs, travel, winter break, sibling rivalry. It doesn't matter what topic you want to cover in your yearbook. I highly encourage you to perhaps think about covering these in different modes of coverage. That will allow you to tell great stories and also have a book that is not visually redundant. I'm Yvette Mansulich. Again, I am the advisor of the Prowl Yearbook at Powell Middle School. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, don't hesitate. Please reach out. I absolutely love what I do. I love this topic, and I hope that I have helped you in maybe rethinking how you're going to structure your yearbook.